it is really hard to just say, I want to watch a scary movie because there are so many very specific subgenres. Normal movie lovers will get very, very turned off by the torture porn saw area, but they can really, really love the Hitchcock psychological thriller kind of stuff that goes on too.
We kick off spooky season with Cole Wissinger back today to talk about his 31 Days of Halloween movie marathon. This is at least a decade running for him, so he talks about his background, the kinds of movies he likes to include, and the first two movies for the first 2 days of October, Saw and Halloween 2. Enjoy. Cole Wissinger, we're back on the Indie Magazine podcast.
We are, indeed. How exciting.
How exciting. You know what, for our listeners, we started the Indie Magazine podcast with your 31 Days of Halloween episode. At this point, 84, 85 episodes ago.
Wow.
It's been a journey, and we're back. It's spooky season, and we're here to have you on to talk about Halloween.
Yeah, we're approaching it a little bit with a little bit more planning ahead. I always released my article on Halloween, which by the time we get there, everyone's kind of done with spooky season. But I didn't know at the beginning of the month what I was going to do, but then it seemed kind of hard to do it during the course of the month. Anyway, so here we are doing a podcast version at the beginning of the month, like we should have been doing for, honestly, 10 years of the history of this magazine podcast.
This is true.
Venture.
I feel like we need a really spooky theme song. We're just going to play like 2 seconds.
Scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight.
All right, we're going to cut it there. That's about as much as we can use.
Let's comment on it. Let's add a little bit. So that was Saturday Night Live, a good thing. Okay, we've been critical. Now we can use it.
Let's talk about the history of you and these scary movies and what your tradition is when it comes to 31 Days of Halloween.
My history of scary movies is that when I was 4 years old, I sat in front of a Universal Monster movie, black and white, in front of a big box television in my 90s home and just was glued to Frankenstein and Dracula, and The Mummy especially was the one I vividly remember. Yeah. And now all these years later, I make it a point, a habit, even before I was doing anything semi-professionally or professionally about reviewing movies, to just watch 31 movies in the month of October. And there have been years in my movie reviewing life where I've tried to do the watch a movie every day in the whole year kind of jam. But always when it gets to October, we turn that calendar and I go into horror/fall vibes/thriller mode.
A pure genre for the season. Now, for everyone listening, do you change it up every year? Do you kind of revisit some of the same ones every year?
So I think I've written this before in the articles, and you can link them if you want, but
I will.
I try to lay out the concept as you're going to be watching 31 movies in 31 days. You cannot be too strict on what counts as a scary movie. You got to just take all comers, grab whatever you think fits the fall vibes, or thriller, or a Disney Channel original movie that's about Halloween, or whatever it takes to get you through it. And I keep certain through lines from year to year, and I keep certain things going during the course of the month. The first of every October 1st, I watch the Halloween franchise, a Halloween movie, and I just count as I go. So I know that I am in year 10 of taking this seriously because I just watched Halloween 10, which is actually Halloween 2, which is the Rob Zombie 2009 sequel to the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween. But it's the 10th one in the franchise. I know where I'm at. Yeah. And I did this a little bit before that, but I've watched a Halloween and a Friday the 13th, generally on the 13th, every single year counting forwards, so that I know I get through those important franchises.
Wow. So yeah, some of the touchstones. Do you have anything on your list this year that kind of breaks a rule or strays from what you've done in years past?
Every so often, I'll try to get through a full franchise in a given year. And because there's a new Alien movie, and the Alien movies can go up and down a little bit in quality, and I even I never got around to Covenant. That's the Fassbender one, I think. I still haven't watched that in general. Yeah. So because they started as the In Space No One Can Hear You Scream the first Alien, 1979, is truly a horror movie. I am going to be watching, there's going to be a week, and it'll be, I'll start it, since we're going to release these podcasts on Wednesday. I'll start it on a Thursday or a Wednesday and get through, and we'll just talk about Alien that week. That's going to be my thing. I've tackled all the Fear Streets when those came out. I got through 3 of those in a row. I went through the Final Destinations because there were only 5 of them. But I've never taken on a franchise as robust as Alien all in one October. So I'm going to try that.
Well, that'll be fun. I'll make sure I'll try to have Madison join us for that episode too, because he and I just did an Alien movie series over the summer, one of them including Aliens, Prometheus, and then we just reviewed Romulus recently. But yeah, I haven't seen Covenant either, so that would be a fun one to kind of dip a toe into. Okay, so we've got the Alien series. You've got Halloween. You've got Friday the 13th.
I do a Universal monster every year, most years. I try to get a Hitchcock almost every year. So again, what counts as horror can be a little looser than some of these. If it wasn't made in the 1980s and has a body count above 13, it doesn't count. And you know what? Here's a secret. John Carpenter's original Halloween only has about 4 dead bodies on screen at any given time, and it doesn't really get into the splatter and gore. And you have to embrace some of the better versions, even though Halloween and horror movies have gotten a reputation of being trashy and exploitative. Not all of them have to be that way. There's some really good just genre filmmaking out there.
Yeah, now you are married and you've got a child. I think we can talk about that. When are you going to introduce your child to 31 Days of Halloween movies?
Well, we are going to watch It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Wonderful.
And he is exactly 1 year old. He understands Toy Story when that comes on, when the little Pixar bouncing lamp comes. So he has had screen time before he's 2 years old. So I might be a bad parent, but I'm pretty sure I did too. Whenever I was watching, it was VHS tapes on repeat. It wasn't Disney Plus, but I was getting the same kind of movie exposure at least. So we're going to watch a little Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, maybe scan through. We watched the Toy Story of Terror yesterday. It was like 20 minutes long. I didn't count it as my thing, but we're starting it. My wife will watch some scary movies with me. Some of them are a little bit outside of her comfort zone or preference. She grew up watching the Saw movies. And so right now, today is the 2nd. We're going to watch Saw tonight. And
oh my gosh.
I've now, because Halloween has reached its end, I am going to introduce Saw as the movie that I go through each year watching the next installment on October 1st. Because now that I've watched all 10 of the original Halloween and the 3 most recent Blumhouse Halloweens have come out since I've been doing this list in the past 10 years. So I've watched them also within the confines of what I do. I'm putting the Halloween series away, and it's going to be Saw, because there's now 10 of them that'll take me through the next 10 years of this marathon.
The next decade of the marathon starts with Saw. That's pretty big. And remind me, with Saw, they are continuing to do them, right? Because I want to say the Chris Rock one I heard was going to be the end, but then it's not the end.
Spiral from the Book of Saw is what you're thinking.
Spiral,
that was a few years ago. Saw 10 just came out last year. Saw 10 just came out last year, and I watched that. And honestly, they could do more from that, because the timeline of Saw has always been convoluted. They're all interconnected, and they have fun with it. And as long as Tobin Bell is alive, they can keep doing the Jigsaw Killer. And honestly, he hasn't been in all of them recently anyway, and they can do whatever they want.
When it comes to these movies, you're right. They have some flexibility and some room with the audience. So do you already have your list of 31 movies ready to go?
Almost never. So again, been doing this for 10 years, and really on October 1st, I had the intention of watching 31 movies even before then, going back to probably 2013 was the first time I tried, or 2012. And I've learned that the way for me to be able to do it is I have to have some wiggle room. I'll probably come in, and I do. I have about 20 on my list, and Aliens takes up 7 of those slots. But I've got 20-ish that I know that I want to get to this year, that if I haven't watched them in the past 10 years, it's time to revisit if there's classics, ones that I've never seen before. I try to sprinkle in a healthy dose of those. I try to sprinkle in a healthy dose of movies I just really, really like. My wife and I might watch Cabin in the Woods because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I don't think she's seen it. And for the first 3 or 4 years of my marathon, that was the that was one that I watched every year anyway. And I think it's Tristan, I don't know if you remember this, but we were on a cruise during October one time, and I brought a couple DVDs and I had a couple movies that I had downloaded on Netflix, and I continued my marathon from
cruise
next to Mexico with you and another one of our friends. And one day we popped in Cabin in the Woods because I had that DVD into my laptop and we watched that.
And it was great. That was one of the ones I was like, oh, this is like a really good movie and fun to watch. I remember that one. I remember Blair Witch. I really liked Drag Me to Hell, which I did not expect at all.
Yes.
That was a great one.
And then there was like some trashy Netflix movie about like your sleep paralysis demon called Dead Awake that I watched that year specifically. Because I remember it was on the cruise. Anyway, so like this helps me create vivid memories about October every single year. I'm just a really big fan. And so kind of bringing it around to where we started, the stuff that I try to do every year, 29 days from now, I'll be watching Psycho. Psycho is the movie that I end my marathon with reliably every single year. It's the only one I have watched every single time for 10 years in a row. And it is maybe my favorite movie of all time. It was the original slasher, and yet it's also a serious Hitchcock movie, and it's got good acting, and it's just the best combination of all these things that I love.
It's a classic, and there's a reason. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one in years. Maybe I'll sit down with my fiance and we'll watch Psycho. That would be good. Before we go, what can you tell people about where to find horror? I mean, do you watch them on any streaming service? Are you going to Screambox? You kind of broadening horizons that way? How should someone try and do their own version or watch some scary movies this month?
If you're looking for where to start, find horror movies that you do like and go from there, right? It is hard, and I have tried this because there are some movies I want to put up on my TV and watch with my family. And so I just this past month have been scrolling through HBO Max and Disney Plus and Hulu and the streaming services that I have, search horror and just start clicking. Amazon Prime has just so many, but it's kind of intimidating if you don't know what you're looking for. So I have written 4 or 5 articles with 31 different movies every single year. If any of the GIFs or blurbs catch your eye, then maybe start with that one. But it is really hard to just say, I want to watch a scary movie, because there are so many very specific subgenres that normal movie lovers will get very, very turned off by the torture porn, Saw, Cabin Fever, Hostel kind of area. But they can really, really love the Hitchcock psychological thriller kind of stuff that goes on too. So just kind of start with what you know you do like, and then just take bitty steps out of that.
Well, and for everyone listening, we do have those 5 articles we have written from you. I think we missed one in 2022 on our website, but the rest of them we have up there. So I'm going to have all those linked in the show notes. And I was scrolling through them earlier today, and I was like, oh, there is M. Night Shyamalan, there's Cronenberg, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You even have Phantom of the Opera on there for one of the years.
Which, I watched the new musical version, which has absolutely nothing to do with horror, but the Phantom of the Opera, the character, comes from a book, but on screen comes from Lon Chaney, who was just a monster guy. It was an old-fashioned universal. Lon Chaney Jr. was the Wolfman, but Lon Chaney was the Phantom. And the things that he did to his face behind that mask for the money shot when they pull it off, and that's classic horror. And so, we've kind of strayed from the plot there when we get into the musical adaptation and what got on the screen in 2001. But to me, the Phantom is a horror creature.
Yeah. And an old classic horror, villain, anti-hero, whatever you want to call him.
He's the bad guy. The Phantom, guys, stop being horny. The Phantom's the bad guy.
Either way, links are in the show notes. We're going to have you back on next week to talk about what you've watched thus far. And for everyone listening, tune in, share with any friends of horror, Halloween, scary movies, or just movies in general. And we'll be back again with another episode this week with a pair of horror directors and actors in a short film we recently reviewed. Until then, watch good horror movies. Before we go, make sure you check out the show notes on your favorite podcast platform. For links to the movies that Cole mentioned today, with Halloween 2 from 2018 and Saw from 2004, as well as links to all of the previous articles Cole has written with us covering his 31 Days of Halloween. Until next time, we hope you watch good, perhaps scary, movies and TV.